going to try and poke at our guests to really help us understand the importance of news reporting for the Canadian Jewish community. And I told them when we spoke a couple of days ago, we did a rehearsal, that that this community, Beth Tikva at least, is very, very interested in this topic. I think it's panning out in the numbers that are participating tonight. When the CJN stopped publishing last year, people in the middle of a crisis, it was like an additional blow to them in a time where they felt so much disconnection. I don't know what you want to call it, the failure of the CJN, the inability of the CJN to continue as a viable entity, it really hit people hard. And maybe we'll have time to explore that tonight. But I want you to know before we begin that we're a community that's really rooting for the success of this new venture. So if we want to do this at future times, just to give you both encouragement for the project, if for no other reason, I'd be very open to that. So Yoni and Brian, let me share with you their bios. Yoni's bio was several pages long, but he condensed it to one sentence, which is nice for time constraints. Yoni Goldstein is the CEO and editor of the Canadian Jewish News. He lives in Toronto. Thank you, Yoni. That's wonderful. Very modest guy. Brian is an award-winning business journalist and the new president of the Canadian Jewish News, which is where he got his start in journalism. He's written for the New York Times, for the Washington Post, for CNBC, the Globe and Mail, among other publications. He's also the founder of communications agency All Caps Content and appears regularly on CTV News. He lives in Winnipeg with his wife, his 3 daughters, and 2 dogs. So let me start by asking you both to tell us a bit about your involvement in the CJN. Tell us a bit about your careers, about why this is interesting to you. You could be doing anything else in the world of journalism, and yet you're both very passionate about the CJN. Where does it come from? Brian, why don't you start first?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's nice to be kind of back in Toronto, even though it's virtually. I lived in Toronto for many years. I went to Ryerson in 2000 and what is it, 2 now. Originally from Winnipeg, lived in Toronto for about 16 years, and then we moved back to be closer to family and closer to our cottage at Winnipeg Beach. And so we moved back about 3 years ago. So it's nice to kind of still be connected to the community through the CJN and do things like this. I feel like a bit of a jerk now with my long bio when Yoni was just at the line. So I didn't mean to brag or anything like that, but I got my starts in journalism really at the Canadian Jewish News. I wrote the university scene column from Winnipeg, from university, for 2 years, and that is where I kind of learned how to write, and then continued writing a lot for the CJN after that, for Joe Surge for the art section, and so it was great and a big important part of my journalism starts. And then I was a music journalist at first out of Ryerson, talking about sort of dying industries that don't pay well. Music journalism was one of the first that was kind of hit. So I ended up going to business journalism, spent a few years at Rogers working at advisor.ca, working at Canadian Business Magazine. And then 10 years ago, I went out on my own, just thought that, I don't know, to open up all of the different publications and just concentrate on one, and then freelance for a whole bunch of different places. And as you said, started my own kind of content agency a couple years ago, trying to help companies create kind of better editorial content. And I joined the CJN. I wanted to join the CJN board for a while. So my kids went to Heschel. We got some good connections with people who were on the CJN board, but they weren't ready for my wisdom to get on the board when I was originally asking, until February of 2000. And I was so excited. I thought it was going to be great. I had written some stuff in the book that's behind Yoni's shoulder there, Northern Lights. And so Yoni and I were getting to know each other, and I thought this is a perfect opportunity to kind of help influence the future of the CGN. Little did I know that the publication would shut down. I just to clarify your comment about a failure, I wouldn't say that. It's a product of the recession and COVID and advertising drying up, and there are probably ways it could have stayed, but it was easier maybe to just kind of pause and shut down. But there was always this idea that we could maybe bring it back. And then that's what happened. Yoni and I kept talking, right away after this kind of happened. And I didn't sort of set out to become president of the board of the CJN and revive it with Yoni, but we didn't think there would be a pandemic. So here we are.
I guess for my story, maybe I'll just break it to pre and post CJN, and we can do the pre fairly quickly. But I didn't study journalism. I didn't know journalism was something I was even interested until I had finished my my master's in English literature and was looking around for something to do. And somebody suggested going to do an internship for 6 months at the Jerusalem Report magazine. So I went to Israel for 6 months, and I learned how to write and report there. I stayed on with the magazine as a correspondent for some time when I came back to Canada. Also, like Brian, struggled as a freelance writer, did music writing, did a lot of writing for the CJN, and Mordechai Ben-Dot played an instrumental role in helping me develop my voice. And that led to a job at the National Post. And then after that, I worked at Maclean's and a fashion magazine and at Post Media again. And then when I was 33 and the CJN had just announced it was going to close, I got a phone call asking if I'd be interested in being the new editor-in-chief of the CJN, which I had thought was closing. But I was presented with a plan to keep the paper going. And over the next 7 years, we redesigned, I think, the way the CJN was presented to the Jewish community, first in terms of the print, to give it a little bit of a more dynamic feel, to make it more of a news magazine than a newspaper that was sort of always chasing the news, partially because we were, in a print medium and because of the print schedule of the paper. And also to start talking about issues in the community that maybe hadn't been talked about as vocally before. And we put together a product that I was very proud of for 7 years. And I really think that every week we brought a lot to the table for the Jewish community. And I know from speaking to people and research that the CJN has done, that resonated, and that one of the things I like to talk about from some of the research that the CJN has done over the years is that your typical copy of the print CJN would stay in a house for 3 to 4 weeks, which is 3 to 4 weeks longer than your average newspaper. And that was because it really connected with the community in very, very real ways. So when the paper unfortunately closed last April, and I and the rest of the staff lost our job, I think there was a sense from many of us right away that we'd like to try and put something back together. And I think over the months after that, especially talking with Brian, trying to figure out what we think the world and the media world are going to look like post-COVID, and putting together what we think is a vision for the future of the CJN that can build it in a sustainable way and in a dynamic way that meets all different kinds of Jewish people in Canada, wherever they are. And that's, I'd say the thing that I learned most in the last 7 years at the CJN was that my job was as much about journalism as it was about community building. So, for me, from a personal perspective, as much as from a professional perspective, perhaps even more, it was important to me to see the CJN come back. And, Brian and I and the rest of our team are lucky enough to be in a position to be able to try and do that.
So help us understand, Yoni, you said that the renewed CJN was a big success in many ways. So what went wrong?
Well, I think COVID is really the main answer to that question. look, the newspaper print industry is not the healthiest of industries at the moment, but we were not doing so terribly. But when COVID began, there was a real, very quick drop off in advertising sales. And I think that scared people. And there was a very good reason to be scared. I think if you go back and think about it, and, maybe if we'd held on for another,
What does that mean? It scared people. Who did it scare?
well, it scared the people who are working there and the people and the board of the newspaper.
You're saying when all the advertisers started pulling out just because businesses are closing and we're nervous, the board of the newspaper said, we're not going to recover from this if we keep running.
Yeah,
We're going to just dig a deep hole of debt. We need to close now before it gets worse.
Can I just jump in here?
So, yes, please
clarify the word. We weren't in debt. We actually had, there was money so there wasn't any of that. I think the issue, part of the thing that was happening at the CGN when I joined, which I was excited about, was that there was a lot of talk about more of a transition to kind of digital and trying different things, and it was an exciting time, and I think that's why I was brought on, and there were some other, a younger generation of other board members that were brought onto the board at that time to take it into a new direction. So in some ways, some of the things that we're doing now were already discussed then. Print is, I still believe in print as a general concept. I think there's a lot of good reasons to open up a newspaper. I still subscribe to the Globe and Mail. I subscribe to the CJN before it stopped printing. But when there's a big shock to the system like this and advertisers pull out, and we were not by any means the only newspaper that went this route, where there were a lot of other publications that did shut down and are not coming back. And so there could have been other options, but this was sort of the easiest and cleanest option where we wouldn't end up getting into debt. So when you shut down, there was still money there and still opportunity for someone to take over like us. So it wasn't, we probably could have kept going. There could have been other things. We could have stopped print for a while and just focused on the web. But I think the consensus was, let's call it a shutdown with the idea that someone could come in, and that someone, I think.
So this is really interesting. I didn't know that when the decision was made to shut down, it was shut down, but wink, wink, we'll be back. This is going to be a temporary pause, and when things are better, we're going to reinvent ourselves.
So I wouldn't go that far either. So
okay.
There was hope that there would be someone to restart it. There was no guarantee that would happen. I think there was some hope that Yoni and I would take this forward because we had right away sort of started talking about this, but neither, at some point, it was over a few months, either of us could have said, no, we don't want to do this, or things could have shifted. So there was no guarantee. There was nothing promised. I think there was a hope that something would happen.
There was a hope. Brian, let me ask you.
I would also say that, look, like we take ourselves back to literally about a year this time. The world, as crazy as it looks now, it was infinite times more crazy then, and nobody knew what anything was going to look like. So, decisions that, it was difficult, I think, to make very rash decisions that would have long-term outcomes. But the hope was that even in doing so, there might be a way, when things shake out and we sort of see what the world is going to look like, that we could put something back together.
Right. Brian, if you don't feel comfortable answering the question, don't answer, but I want to ask you just straight up. Was the print edition I'm not going to use the word profitable, but was it a sustainable effort up until last year?
Good question. There, like a lot of papers, there may have come a time where we'd have to seriously think about continuing the print edition as it was.
So you're saying the trends were not looking good, because you're saying to me we had money.
Yeah.
Then we decided to shut down very quickly when the advertisers pulled out.
Yeah, I mean, that's so trend-wise, it wasn't looking as, it was following a path where we'd probably have to maybe pivot in some way in the future. Although, again, we were kind of, there were, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but there were things that were happening that could have brought in additional revenue. There were things that the CGN wasn't doing that we're going to do that could have been incorporated, like events, fundraising. That was not part of this previous CGN's sort of history, and that it will be more of ours. So it's hard to say, but when all the advertisers kind of pull out at the same time, I mean, Yoni makes a great point. Things were so crazy then, it was hard to know what would happen. So if we didn't shut down and there was no advertising, the bleeding, we wouldn't have been in the good position we're actually in now to restart it. So if we just kept it going, it's hard to know.
So you're saying it was a smart decision to hit the pause button. There were many, many unknowns. It turns out that Toronto had the longest shutdown, I think they said, of a longer shutdown than many other major cities. That would have certainly hurt the paper. Help us understand what percentage of your annual budget is coming from subscriptions, and in the previous generation, what percentage is coming from subscriptions and what percentage is coming from advertising?
I don't actually know the numbers, but more advertising, I think, than subscriptions. I mean, like a lot of businesses.
Yoni, you say yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, more advertising.
Are you disappointed in the Jewish community that people were not paying for the content?
Yoni?
No, I wouldn't say that at all. In fact, if I'd had my way over the years, the CJN would have been free for everybody all the time. And one of the things we're building in our new sort of digital ecosystem is a lot of free content, because I think it's really important for the community. And again, like I said before, I don't really blame anybody for looking inward last March and trying to figure out what their lives were going to look like without worrying about whether the CJN was going to collapse too.
And I think, if I just add, I think that it's, in some ways, it's great. I mean, so I do think was the right idea, and I think launching in the way that we are is also the right idea, given kind of where things are at, and the outpouring of support. The people who were upset about it closing, the people who are very excited about hearing it's coming back, is really heartening, especially as someone who has been involved with the CGN for so long. Not as close as Yoni, but been writing about it for a long time. Just that proves that we're doing something right, that people care about this. There's a hole to fill. Without us there's a big hole. And so I think this whole, it's too bad we had to go through this and shut down, but I think we learned a lot about how much people care about it, and that's positive for the future.
I want to say to you, a lot of what you're saying in this conversation resonates with me as a rabbi with regards to the challenges we're facing in this legacy institution, right? There's a lot of people who want the content, and we're trying to figure out, and they like the content, but we've got to find a way to make this sustainable and make it work. So what makes, where I guess I'm missing something is, you were printing this paper, the advertisers were paying for most of it, and you want to evolve completely to a model where the Jewish community, despite their liking the content and being encouraged by the content, now won't even be asked to pay for a subscription at all. As a rabbi, I'm listening to that and saying, oh my God, is this where we're heading as a shul too? No more dues, no more nothing. Everything is going to be free. So give me some encouragement that the future of Jewish life is going to have some communal accountability for the content that they want to receive.
Yeah, a big part of our projections going forward is going to be a new subscription campaign, and we will probably launch it sometime in the summer, closer to Rosh Hashanah, which is also when we'll be delivering our second print magazine.
Okay, so you're saying you're saying, Yoni, what you wanted did not did not happen. You wanted free, everything free.
No. I was saying that if I had my druthers, I'd think that if the community could support it or donorship could support it, I think it would be great on a communal level for it to be free. And there have been free Jewish newspapers in the past; they just haven't been the CJN. But it would be really nice to build up to that. I think to make the project sustainable, we definitely need to have a subscription model, and we need to have advertising, and we need to have fundraising too.
Okay, so we're sticking with all three, including a subscription model.
Yes.
Now, there's all kinds of different subscription models out there for media. All kinds of different. Which one are you going to go with? Now, I know I have to call the Globe and Mail every year because they're going to increase my monthly fee for the Globe and Mail to $30 a month if I don't call them and tell them that I'm going to cancel, and then they'll reduce it to a normal rate. With the synagogues, with the synagogue, we get the same thing. I'm going to cancel my membership unless you give me a membership fee for X dollars. Given that it doesn't cost you anything extra to add somebody on to your subscription list, what's the monetization model here for a subscriber? What do you expect that people will pay?
So we are still developing kind of the subscription, what we're gonna do for subscription. I might call it, I don't know if we'll officially call it this, but just to kind of maybe put it in a bit of a different context, call it membership. Maybe you can give us some tips after on how this might work. But the idea, I think it goes to kind of the mission that we're trying to bring to the CGN really is community. And in some ways, we want to be seen as a community organization versus just a news outlet or a print publication. So, I mean, in the media today, and it's not just print. I mean, we are doing some prints. We're going to do web. We're going to do podcasts. We're doing video. We're going to do, it's all of this stuff. And there's an opportunity. We want to have more touch points with Jews across the country. So it's not just here's your money and here's a news article that you can read. We want to give more. And what that will be is to be determined. We're having some discussions internally, so I don't want to give it away, but there will be more than just the content itself on the sites will probably be free. We're not interested, at least not now, in paywalling anything, but there could be exclusive content. There could be exclusive events. There could be, first listen to a podcast. There could be lots of different things where you're part of the CGN community. So you're paying for that. And we'll say it here first, I guess, but we're thinking of, I think the subscription for the CGN was $36, which we all thought was actually pretty low for a great newspaper. We're going to raise that. So, and there won't be, there'll be one rate. So there won't be a chance to maybe call in and ask for a lower rate. You pay it or you won't, but it's up to us to make it worth your while, to bring that value to you. So you will say, I want to pay this rate. We're also we're going to do fundraising too. So as I mentioned, that wasn't part of the CGN's model because we weren't able to accept donations. This is something new that's been happening through the government's support of media, where we can't officially yet, we're in the process, but hopefully very soon, to accept donations and give tax receipts, which will be a game changer. We can go and we can fundraise for different projects that we want to do. We can think big and we can get some dollars behind that. And so there'll be fundraising campaigns too. And that's going to be, I think, a game changer in what we can do, again, to kind of support the community, not just the print news. So there's a lot of different ways that we can make money, and making money, not, we're nonprofit, so we're not getting rich off this, but it's to be sustainable.
That's right.
Around for years. We don't want to close down again. We want to make sure we're here and giving new things and better things to the Jewish community across the country is important too.
Yeah. It's unbelievable how much of this conversation resonates with me. This could be the exact conversation we have in a staff meeting. How do you give people a sense that their membership contribution is worthwhile? And what content do you make exclusive? And what content do you make open to the public? These are the big questions that I think are facing all of us as we try and navigate a world where so much content is out there and free. and we've got to create sustainable institutions to try and preserve community. I mean, you said it, that really is, I think, a very noble goal. And I don't want to speak for every synagogue in the city, but you should both know that you can rely on the synagogues to help in any way you can. That's the business we're in. And I think the CJN plays a crucial role. We always, I mean, back in the day, tried to use the CJN as a way of reaching out beyond our membership to try and promote our events. And actually, it's been a real killer for the shuls that we don't have a way to reach the broader community as easily as we used to, with the unsubscribe button being hit on everybody's list, but still the value that they've seen in that print edition that you said, Yoni, they keep around for weeks sometimes on the kitchen table. Go ahead, Brian.
I'm optimistic about the future, in part because unlike, maybe some other publications out there, we don't really have competition. We have competition. There are other Jewish publications, other Jewish websites, but
they don't care about Canada.
Well, there is a lot of them are US based, but there are,
right.
There are papers in different cities, but we are focused on the Jewish community. The stuff that we're going to report on is not the stuff that will appear in the Globe and Mail, in the
right.
National Post. And so there is a market for what we do that you can't get anywhere else. And that's been the same for years, and it's the same going forward. And that's why it made sense, I think, to me, and for sure to Yoni, who's been doing this for years, that it makes sense to restart it, because, if we're trying to start the next Globe and Mail, that would be silly, but nobody else is doing this.
So talk to somebody like me, someone from my generation, young adult. I think I'm still a young adult. My parents would, the members of my shul, the second you make a subscription available, they'll sign up. But my friends and me say, what do we need to sign up for? I could just go on the website. I'm on Facebook. I can get all the content for free. What do I need to pay? And do you even want me to pay? Or is the goal not to, to rely on other in revenue sources?
I think like a shul or any Jewish organization, one of the reasons that you focus so much on youth and on people as they're growing up and get to know them is because you're trying to lead them toward a life of action afterward. So, even if like 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds are not subscribing to print media or really any media, that makes the mission to try and go and find them and say, like, just literally plop our content right in front of them where they are already, and show it to them and introduce it to them. We can sell advertising to that also, but the value in reaching young people, as like I said, any organization knows, is if you can hook them in early, then you can get them for life. I think the reality is that the print edition of the CJN, skipped over a generation in that respect, because it wasn't migrating to digital as quickly as people were. And so there's a little bit of a catch-up game to be had. I think there are very good reasons why that happened. We had a small staff and we had to put out a good newspaper every week. So right. Digital things, which grew consistently and have continued to grow, actually, even when the CJN was not in production. Our web numbers are still growing over the last 7 months. So the interest has been there. But I think now the renewed focus, especially with podcasting, with newsletters, we had a Clubhouse chat last Thursday evening, and we're planning some more. We're doing a lot of things on Facebook. We are going to where people are and trying to make an impression on them, a very early and strong, good impression.
I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. Ask your question.
So Brian, let me shoot something else at you. You see the demographics in the Jewish community. neither of you have mentioned them, but there's something we think about at the shul a lot: shrinking Jewish community, high rates of assimilation, less ties to ethnic background and ancestry. Is that part of this conversation, or do you think that hasn't hit us yet? We'll let the Americans deal with that first, and
I don't know, Yodi,
and
you start with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's for sure in a way hit us. But there are, I still think that a lot of those Jews who are, in classic terms, not engaged, they are engaged. They're just engaged in things that nobody's bothered to check in on. That's why we have like a sports podcast called The Menschwarmers. Is it like super Jewish? No, it's a couple of Jewish guys talking about their favorite Jewish athletes. But I think that is a communal touch point, and that's something that's important. It's really no different than the people of my father and grandfather's age who went to the JCC to go swim or have a schwitz together. I don't really see it as being any different. So in that respect, I think there are lots of touch points to Judaism that can be cultural and really not have anything to do with religious. They're there for the taking if you can connect with people and their interests.
And actually, was what I was thinking before. But I think maybe some of the difference with the synagogue is that you need people inside the synagogue, and you need minions. And maybe I'm wrong, but
we're a much more traditional model of what it means to be Jewish. You have a lot more flexibility in the paper.
Exactly. So I do think, through the last few years. Well, first of all, I think there's a point where a lot of Jews kind of maybe lose touch with Judaism when they're younger, and then they have kids and they want to come back and they start feeling these connections. That is true for me. Grew up in a traditional household, kept kosher, and always connected with Judaism pretty closely, except, in your 20s, you're sort of not thinking about it as much. Then you have kids and you want to build a Jewish life like your family built for you. And hi, Dad, I know he's listening on this, but so I think there's a point where there's younger Jews who want to make those connections. But over the last few years, we've seen anti-Semitism rise. We've seen things where people are thinking about themselves now as Jewish where they may have not before. And I even think COVID is making those connections between people more important, where, missing Pesach, which someone may not, I don't know. This is how I felt. I don't know how all Jews felt, but having the Zoom Seder was terrible. Like, it really wasn't fun. Like, it was a novelty at first, but I missed my family and I missed it. And I think I sort of think that maybe other Jews felt that way too. Maybe who don't think about it as much. If they're not getting those things that they've taken for granted, maybe now they're starting to think, I should be exploring this more. This is important to me. And they don't have to be religious. They don't necessarily have to go to shul, but I think there's a lot of Jews across Canada who are culturally Jewish, who care about Judaism, who don't have those connections, and we can be there to help bring that in whatever the way they want.
And yet, so the whole idea of social media is we don't need you to be there. We'll do all of that stuff ourselves. And yet, I think the CJN is trying to straddle a hybrid model between social media and Big Daddy print. I want to ask you about the Facebook presence, because it looks like that's where things are picking up now, if I'm not mistaken. Look, Facebook is under a lot of scrutiny right now. I was talking to you both earlier. They take content from publications like yours, post it, make money off it, and don't give you a cent. Tell me about the intersection between social media and classic media and why you decided that social media needs to be part of your strategy.
Well, look, I think social media needs to be part of any journalism or really media strategy at this point in the game. If you're not doing it, then you're seen as being very behind the times. It's noble to think of the idea of starting a publication that has an anti-social media strategy. That's my dog just panting in the background. Say hi, Coco. But I think we've seen even in the last in like the first 2 months of this, that, social media has its good side and its really bad side too. And like, It's something that we've struggled with. It's not our intention to be publishing on social media long term. We'll have a new website. We're having it built right now. There will be a sort of like a light version of it in the next 10 days to 2 weeks. And then the full version will launch sometime around May. And I think we're all looking forward to that, to try and move the conversation into a place where we feel more comfortably able to curate it without sort of the liabilities that Facebook brings. I'd also say, look, like, Facebook has gotten, like all social media, it's gotten even crazier than it was in the last year. And there are certain people on our small CJN staff now who believe that, as there's nicer weather outside and as we get more vaccines into people's arms, people will have less time for Facebook Narishkeit. I think
when you say crazier, you mean people are spending a lot more time on Facebook with sensationalist stories rather than traditional.
Yeah, and I think in general, people are cooped up at home and they're a little bit crazy. And who hasn't wanted to lash out at somebody, for the smallest thing, just because you've literally had a very different kind of life for the last 6 months, right? Like, it happens. And I really hope that attitude will change, and that Facebook and social media aren't like terminally broken. But I would say at the same time, we're looking forward to not be publishing primarily on Facebook in the next couple of weeks.
Right. I hope that people realize there is something very important about gathering together in person, about controlling our own narratives within the Jewish community, and not just allowing the cesspool of criticism to fester online, which is what is going on now. And a year into this pandemic, maybe people are starting to realize this is not good for anybody, and maybe the way we were doing things before ought to be reconsidered. Let me. We only have a few more minutes until we move to the Q&A. Speak to this crowd, 148 screens that are with us tonight. What do you want from us to make sure? I talked to you earlier. I said the Huffington Post today, gone. Everybody fired in Canada. CJN, it's the second time that CJN had to either close or close temporarily. We don't want it to happen again. What do you want from the people on this Zoom so that this next stage of the CJN's life is sustainable and lasts as long as possible?
Should I start? I think we want to hear from you. I think we want to know what you want to know about, and so I think making sure that we're providing content that's useful and interesting to you guys on here, and to your kids and grandkids, because we wanted this to last for multiple generations. So I think that is important. We want engagements. So it's our responsibility to create good content that you will want to read, but we want you to come and we want you to read it. And I don't want to be crass about this, but we need your money too. And I think any Jewish community organization probably at some point has an ask. And as I said, we'd like to do fundraising. We're sort of aiming to maybe start creating some fundraising campaigns for 2022 around the Day of Giving in December. And so when we come and say, here's what we're going to do, here's our plans, and if you think it's worthwhile, we would love for you to support it financially too, because ultimately that's what keeps the salaries paid. So engagement, hearing from you, and then finally, the dollars.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd add, and maybe it's in short order these days, but I'd ask for a little bit of patience. I mean, we are just sort of trying to figure this out with a staff that's about a quarter the size of what I would have termed a small staff for a large community newspaper prior. And we're figuring out a lot of these things as we go.
How many are you, Yoni? Or how many staff are you right now?
We have 5 editorial staff, and then we have 1 person in sales and 1 person working part-time in sort of like general management.
String shoe budget.
Yeah, strings
Yeah.
shoe budget. We're not planning on having an office again in the near future. We're doing this really bootstrapping it on our own. Nobody's making a lot of money on this, but we all feel very strongly that this is something that we can contribute to and that we can put on stronger footing. It's going to take some time to do that, and things are the different sort of content that we're putting out, different products that are they're all kind of staggered over the next few months. We already have a newsletter out, and if you haven't signed up yet, go to thecjn.ca and just give us your email address. Like I said, we're putting out a magazine in print. If you were a CJN print subscriber before, if you got this book delivered to you, you'll probably get the magazine at some point before Pesach. If you're not, we're planning to make a free version available digitally on our website, again, in the weeks leading up to Pesach, so you can stay tuned for more. And just in general, start checking out some of the new things that we're doing. The newsletter is a different way of telling news stories and engaging people. I've heard generally very good comments about it. Podcasting is really ramping up, and it's got a certain kind of dedicated crowd, but I'd urge people to give it a chance. Even if while you're preparing your Pesach food or something, just put something on in the background and have a listen. And there's more things to come, more print magazines over the year, a better website, and all sorts of things that we haven't even thought of maybe yet. We just want to try a lot of things, see what engages, see what works, see what people want, and take
this is a real, I'm listening to two people who have a very entrepreneurial approach to a 100-year-old newspaper. We're going to try and everything under the sun to get people's attention, and we're ready to be as creative as we need to be.
Exactly. I think the startup mentality is a very good way to look at it.
Yeah. And I know people are upset that they're not getting the prints. I mean, it has been going on for 60 years. But in some ways, not having that cost, not having that demand on the time allows us to finally think big and think about new ideas and get broader. I think this could be hopefully looked at as maybe one of the most exciting times in the CJN's history. Because we are taking that kind of entrepreneurial approach, and I think that will be better for everybody in going forward over the next several years, where we can reach people in all sorts of different ways than just the print, where that may have been actually limited, despite everyone who loved it, and I did too. But I think this opens things up. And just one last thing on the if anyone wants to advertise, we are taking advertising now. So if you have a business out there, give us a call.
So Gail, do we have any questions? I could continue engaging if we don't.
We have just comments right now.
Okay.
So everyone is so happy. I'm getting remarks.
Everyone's very happy
that the CJN is back.
Right, it's being resuscitated. Brian, just to clarify what you said, so the print edition is gone. There will that right now that is not on the table, because I guess I misunderstood when you said the subscription might come back. It will be an online subscription.
Yeah. So the weekly print newspaper is not here. We're having the print magazine, as Yoni said. So there will be print products. There could be other print things. Print, as I said before, I still love print. So I think there's a place for it. I don't know if it has to be a weekly newspaper in the same way. So the subscription that we eventually offer will include the magazine and whatever kind of other print products we put out, but sort of the weekly newspaper as we've done it over the years, that is not happening.
Understood.
I'm one of your subscribers who was hooked early. I grew up getting the CJN at my parents' house and looked forward to seeing it every week in the mail.
Gail, are you reading somebody else's question, or is this your question?
No, this is mine.
Oh, okay.
No, this is mine.
Go ahead.
I
go
totally
ahead.
was hooked growing up with the CJN. And what I loved about it, it was kind of like you got to see what was happening in the community, like what was going on. It's almost like gossip oh, who's getting married, what events are happening, who's doing what, this and that. So I noticed on your Facebook page, and also to tell you, my parents aren't on Facebook, so they're not engaged right now with you. And neither are my children who are in their teens. They're not on Facebook looking at the CJN. It's just me. So I guess how are you going to attract the younger generation? Because I'm hooked for life.
Brian?
Sure. I mean, Facebook, you know, the fact that we're publishing on Facebook was really more of a way to just get things ramped up again, to get things going, to get us to start planning and doing different things. So it is in some ways, it's unfortunate that we're only publishing on Facebook because there's a lot of emphasis there. However, that is going to be a very sort of a much smaller, well, I would say more integrated part. We're not going to be publishing on Facebook the stories. We're going to be on a really great new website that's going to look awesome. That's going to be a lot more functional than the last website. So in terms of publishing, Facebook is not great because not everyone's following our pages. And so that we'll still post our stories there, like, you know, links to the websites in a more traditional way. So I would say anyone who's thinking that Facebook is the new CJN, that is not it. The site's coming and it's going to be great for everybody. Yeah, there is a challenge, and that's our challenge is how do we get younger people engaged? How do we, you know, satisfy the older people who may not be, you know, traditional readers who may not be getting the print product. And we're working on that. And we'll do that through our content. We'll do that through events. We'll do that through our attitude. We'll do that, you know, through the podcast. So, but that's going to grow. I mean, that's our goal. We're not expecting it to happen overnight. We're not going to get the 20, you know, to 30 demographic that maybe hasn't been traditionally CJN tomorrow. We're going to work towards it, and that's what we want. And that's our measure of success in large part is, do we get a new generation? And if we don't get that, then we'll think about other ways to do it. But we have that in our sight. So we'll make sure your kids are the first to join to the new CJN when we you know, launch that site.
Yoni, with the limited staff that you have, are you nervous at all about the breadth of coverage that you're capable of? I know you'll get the stories in Toronto. I know you get the stories in Montreal, but how are you going to, with such a small staff, cover the coast to coast kinds of events that might interest a community in, let's say, Winnipeg, Manitoba? Brian, who's going to cover Winnipeg?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time over the last few months speaking to the editors of other Canadian Jewish publications across the country. So places like the Vancouver Independent, the Winnipeg, the paper in Winnipeg. There are two papers in Alberta that have merged. There's the Atlantic Jewish Council that publishes media of some sorts. And part of the plan going forward is to work more closely with all of those organizations and to share content, to share ideas, to share resources even when it makes sense, so that we can truly be national in a way that we haven't been before. Yes, we're going to have to rely more on a freelance network than we used to because of a smaller staff. But I feel confident that we've established enough of that network already, and we'll continue to establish it with the work that we're doing, that we will be able to get to all those stories. And, you know, I think, you know, finding ways to show that we're not Toronto and Montreal centric, at least not all the time, is going to be very important going forward. One of the podcasts we're developing, and we'll probably introduce in the next few weeks, is called Yehupitzville. And it's a podcast where the host, who is a name that I think people in this crowd will recognize when they hear it, goes to small Jewish communities across the country and talks to people there about their experiences. I've always been fascinated with these kinds of stories. And now with a new way of telling them, I think we're going to be able to show our breadth of coverage in ways that we couldn't before.
And I'm here to keep Yoni in check, to make sure he's thinking about Winnipeg and all the other cities too. I know, you know, I lived in Toronto for a long time, but but I know, Toronto, the center of the universe, that people talk about in a maybe not the most nice way. But that's the opportunity here for us, is that there are so many Jews in other cities, obviously, that maybe haven't been traditional readers that we can get. And I think we keep that in mind. I think when we do fundraise, and one of the advantages of fundraising is we say, it's not just operational expenses. Like, that's not necessarily what we're going to be fundraising for. It might be, we want to put a reporter in Western Canada who's going to cover the news. Will people support that? And maybe people in Western Canada would support that. And so there will be, initiatives and projects that we develop to make sure that we're covering it. But the opportunity there in terms of engagement, in terms of, advertising dollars, of subscriptions, it has to be international. And that's one thing that I bring to the table, I think, is just keeping that in mind, that there is that opportunity, but everybody else knows that, on the editorial team too. So I'm once we launch, it's going to happen. I'm not like as concerned about that. It will come.
Gail?
Yeah, a lot of our members are saying that they do find accessing your content on Facebook difficult. They love flipping pages, so they are looking forward to anything that you produce in print. And people are asking about, if you will, expand across the country, and that's maybe the focus was too much on Toronto and Montreal, so they are looking forward to that content. One person wrote, if you're going to have a digital version, like the Globe to Go, they're not in the city, but they like to start their day off with, I guess, snippets of information that the Globe and Mail provides on a daily basis.
Yeah, so that sounds a lot like our newsletter, which is now coming out 3 times a week. And actually, I can answer both of these questions at once through the newsletter. The newsletter offers little snippets, and if you'd like to go forward, it's very easy to click on forward, and it comes free to your inbox.
How do we subscribe to the Canadian Jewish newsletter?
Just go to the cjn.ca, enter your email address, and it'll be in your inbox. But another thing,
I'm a marketer.
Excellent.
CJ, what did you say? CJN.com.
The
CJN.ca. And put in your email address, and you will get it 3 times a week.
Well, you'll get it 3 times a week for now. Eventually, you'll get it 4 times a week, and then you'll be getting it 5 times a week.
Okay.
And at that point, my vision is that the Friday edition of the newsletter will come in an expanded form. It will include all of the things that we've been doing for the week and other things that we're interested in looking at. And it will be available for subscribers, whatever we define that is going forward.
Folks. Keep talking, Yoni. It's okay.
As well as shuls and community centers to print out the Friday expanded PDF newsletter of the CJN and offer it to their communities as well.
Everyone should be going online and subscribing. And I think it's a tremendous thing that the CJN now is going to have charitable status. That's I think for an organization like the CJN, that might be a huge lifeline. And I hope that the people who are on this call, and I'll tell you, me myself, will be supporting the CJN. We want to make sure that you feel the support and have the support from the Jewish community so that you can keep doing what you're doing. I think this has been a difficult year without access to the stories that keep us engaged and proud and connected. And we are really looking forward to having you guys back in business. Thank you so much for giving us your time tonight, but more importantly, for your dedication to community. I mean, you said it, that's what this is all about, as much as it's about stories and yenting about about all the events in the Canadian Jewish community. It is about bringing people together. And I thank you also because you gave me a lot to think about. We're coming out of this pandemic with a lot of opportunities, and I think we have to be ready to try everything to see what works. So thanks everybody for being on the call tonight. Any last words, Brian or Yoni? Anything you want to offer? subscribe.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know, like I said before, just give us a chance and look for us wherever you're consuming media. We're either there right now or we're going to be there very soon.
Yes, and just thanks for this forum too. It's important for us to get in front of the Jewish community, and tell the plans, because
Yes.
we need you guys as much as perhaps you need the stories that we're telling, but we need you guys too.
Yasher koach to you both.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.